everybody, welcome to ABL Down on the Farm, episode 41, where we talk all things Dynasty baseball prospecting, but particularly prospecting the ABL, a 30-team Dynasty, 20 minor league spots per team for a glorious 600 prospects. And tonight, I'm very excited to have a star-studded panel of owners from the ABL, many of whom have been on the show a few times already this season, to talk about some vacancies that we have in the ABL, owners that left and have left rosters in various conditions. And we're going to talk about how owners should think about these rosters as they're acquiring them, and also how owners should think about them in terms of targeting dudes they want off those rosters. With a particular focus, of course, because of the context of the show, on minor leaguers, right? So, but before we delve into all of that, I did want to ask my guys on the show, who I'll introduce in a hot second. We've got, Dylan, who was on the early episodes of this year, has been on the pod many times, right? We've got John, who was just recently on and has graciously agreed to show up again. Kevin, who falls into the same boat, right? Hi, Kevin, how you doing? And we got Frank, who was on last year. And I think this is your first appearance this season on the pod, which I'm very happy to have you back on. So thank you guys very much for your enthusiastic support for the show tonight, for this interesting topic. Super happy to have you on. So before we delve into some of the topics for this evening, because this is episode 41 of ABL Down on the Farm, it's the Tom Seaver episode of the show. Okay. And so I'm curious if any of you guys know how the New York Mets acquired Tom Seaver. Does anybody know?
Mets fan is even more embarrassing.
Belched him forth.
I'm sorry, John. What did you say?
Hellmouth opened up and belched him forth.
Right. It's actually very close to that, right? So, in
great.
Really
I can't wait for this.
Yeah, a bizarre twist of how things worked back in the 1960s, right? They were allowed, when the National League expanded, right, to pick his name out of a hat.
Wow.
I'm not making this up, right? The Houston Astros, who used to be in the National Leagues, and at the time were known as the Colt 45s, were the other expansion team. And the Mets and the Colts, Colt 45s, had a trade-off or whatever you want to call it. And the Mets picked Tom Seaver out of a hat, right? So John is actually very close to the correct answer. Magic.
Wow.
So no scouting, just pure luck.
No. I mean, I assume they had
Good door
scouting
price.
reports on Tom Seaver, right? But it was just we get him.
Wow.
I think you've put forward now a hell of a proposition for how we should handle these three vacant teams.
There you go.
Agree.
There you go. Some owners, we have 3 new owners coming into the ABL.
Duke shaking a hat. Yeah.
Right. And somebody gets to pick the Royals roster, right? And we'll talk about that, right? Maybe we need lottery balls or whatever, but things have become much more advanced and technical as we've moved forward in technology from the 60s. But nevertheless, that's how the Mets got Tom Seaver, who is nicknamed the franchise for the Mets, and is probably still the greatest New York Met of all time. But put that aside for a hot second. But I had to pay tribute to Tom because I have a lot of respect for him. He's a great pitcher. All right. So, let's talk about context for a minute, okay? And I'm, very grateful. I've given you each an assignment for this evening. So I appreciate your patience and diligence in formulating the content of the show tonight. But before we get into your individual assignments, I wanted to talk with you about your perspectives on what has happened in the ABL, because I think it has a common narrative to what we see in different dynasty leagues that we probably each participate in. And that is what happens when, at least mostly good teams go bad. And what I mean by that is at the end of the year or close to the end of the year, you have owners just up and leave. A dynasty league, right? So this is not like a keeper league. It's not like your home league where guys tap out. It's a league where guys like all of us who are doing a podcast at 9:30 at night on a Thursday, right? Much to the ire of our significant others. And many of us have small children or are busy doing other things, right? I mean, I'm taking this show from Virginia. I have a trial right now. It starts on Monday, right? We take this thing probably more seriously than most human beings take anything seriously. But how do you guys think about what has unfolded in the ABL, where we have 3 teams that have just quit? Owners have quit. Right? We've got one that went all in and was trying to go for it, and it didn't work out. Right? We have another that is actually in the World Series right now. Right? It won the league once and is on the precipice of potentially winning the league again. And we have a third team that has actually never been in the playoff for right? Okay, and we'll talk about their individual rosters and how we think about them and what state they left it in. But I'm interested in your thoughts, respectively, and all of you guys can chime in about how does it make you feel as an owner? What do you think the challenges are as a dynasty team, or as a dynasty league, I should say, in kind of dealing with these circumstances? So I'll just randomly pick somebody. So Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think the word that comes to mind with Dynasty Baseball is it's a niche. It's like a niche within a niche. Like most of us in real life have friends that watch baseball. They don't know the 12th ranked prospect for the Minnesota Twins. I'm going to guess it's Cal DeBarcia. Could be wrong. They're all subjective rankings anyway. But yeah, to your point, something like this, that is a lot of fun. But it is time consuming. And just over time, people's time and priorities change. So, maybe we can't spend hours a week looking at prospects anymore, and then just kind of start to fade off.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't understand the perspective of not being able to look at prospects for hours every week, but I hear that the normal human being may not be able to tolerate that. I mean, my motto is always be prospecting, right?
Those normies.
Yeah, but I hear you, right? Those are the mere normies. That's right. So Dylan, I'll turn to you. What are your reactions? I mean, you're you and Kevin are both relatively recent additions to the ABL, and I know you guys have fantasy experience that goes beyond that. But the 30-team format is something quite different than I think either one of you had experienced before. So what are your perspectives now, being you're now an ABL veteran? So how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, anytime teams start to leave a dynasty, it can be a little bit worrying, right? At least I've only been here for 10, 11 months now, but I was familiar with the league for so long, and I feel like when you finally reached out and sort of extended the invitation, I was so glad to be able to join what seemed like such a dedicated group. And I think the thing we can take for granted sometimes is how easily dynasty leagues can fall apart. And I think replacing 3 owners is very doable, but sometimes these things can be like dominoes. And as much as we joked about putting players' names in a hat and picking them for teams, if we had 5 owners depart, I would be hard pressed to think that a redistribution draft for those 5 teams wouldn't be out of the ordinary, right? I've joined dynasty leagues where the only draw to picking a team up was that they were willing to do a redistribution for the missing owners. And that's the product of some of the places these people can leave teams in, right? I mean, Brendan graciously left a team that is sitting on a plethora of talent, but you also have a team like the Rangers that are really sort of shot for talent coming into this next season, right? So I do get worried about the avalanche effect, which could be, and we're still maybe not fully out of the clear yet. We don't know, and I pray that doesn't happen, but 3 is a lot to replace, but not impossible. But I do think we have to count our blessings in the sense of I think we can replace 3 in a league this dedicated.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I agree with the sentiments. Frank, you're in kind of a similar spot to Kevin and Dylan, where you're a relatively recent owner to ABL. And I'm interested in hearing John's perspective because he's been here from the ground up. But what are your perceptions, Frank, as you're like thinking about going into 2026 and these developments?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, kind of what Dylan said, like 3 owners to replace is very like doable. Like that might almost, I don't want to say like normal for a 30-team league, but that's 10% of the owners. Like, we shouldn't, I think, have too much of an issue, especially with everyone dedicated as we are in this group. I guess for me, the interesting thing was like the timing of it, that like it was kind of announced, like during the playoff race. Like it wasn't really, because from my experience in all leagues, it's always like after the season, like let me know if you're coming back, and then, like you'll private message someone, and then like the commission will be like, all right, these people aren't returning after a certain amount of points. So that was the interesting thing that stood out to me. And maybe, it's kind of like a, take like a quick kind of like step back, like almost punch in the gut a little bit too. You know what I mean? Because it's like, we have the podcast with, Tyler and Cal, doing their thing. Sam's been on the show. I don't know if Alan was on like for the first year.
Alan, just a quick pause before a lot of you guys joined. He used to host.
Yeah.
He's the
major league
father, I believe.
Yeah. So he did the major league system, like, so the minor league stuff that I do came after, right?
Okay.
But yes, Alan definitely hosted the original what Tyler does and Cal does right now. What those guys do, that was Alan originally.
Okay. And then, and I'm not sure if Brendan's, if he's ever been on, but kind of having like that league history, go out and, and like I said, with the timing of it, I think is a little jarring. But at the end of the day, just to kind of sum it up, like, at the end of the day, it's 3 owners. At the end of the day, the new owners get to shed contracts. They get to kind of make their mark on the team immediately. And, just kind of rehash what, Kevin and Dylan have said. We got a good group of owners. So, at the end of the day, we'll be good. But it was definitely jarring from the timing from what had happened for sure.
Yeah. So I'm very interested, John, to hear your perspective, because you've obviously been from the ground up, and I'm just a little bit behind you because I came at the very tail end of year 1, but you were here for the expansion draft, the original draft, the startup draft. So what are your perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think I largely agree with what the guys have said already, that in this size of a league, there's always going to be some amount of turnover. The way it happened, how abrupt it was. I'm almost never in the politics channel, like even lurking. So I still don't fully. I mean, I know like broadly.
In broad strokes. Yeah.
But like I decided it wasn't going to be necessary to do like a full analysis of what caused everybody to do what. So setting all that aside, I guess, I think that like that happening so quickly is a bummer. But the fact that it was capped at 3, it seems like it's capped at 3. However, kind of storied those teams were, like that sucks, but it is doable. I think I think one really key piece to this, especially in ABL being able to survive right now, is Jeff stepping up the way he has and running the thing. Because like if that hadn't happened, to kind of bridge this period from a sort of an administrative perspective, then I think we're probably looking at a different situation.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I mean, so Jeff, to flesh out a couple of points that you just made, like, so there's a backstory for why these teams are leaving, right? Which like, I really don't want to get into for the purposes of this show, and I don't think any of us want to get into. But there's a political rift. We have a political channel on Discord, and a bunch of dudes got in a fight about politics, which we don't have to get into here. And it resulted, unfortunately, in these 3 teams leave. Okay. But to your point, like, so Jeff, who's the owner of the Cardinals, has been on the show before, hasn't been on the season, but like, he's kind of like stepped up to like, kind of like, marshal us through the end of the year. And so I think that has been a very, strong leadership. step by Jeff to make sure we get to the end of this season, and hopefully are able to recalibrate going into 2026. Right?
Yeah, and I think too, like, because of that, and because this is a really strong group of teams, and because a lot of folks have had their teams for a while, like the idea of ABL folding, just selfishly for me, is kind of heart wrenching. In part because, like, I think we all probably feel this way. I put a lot into putting this team together. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to be that, right? And I think most people feel that way. There might be a couple folks who are like, burn it down," but
right. Well, obviously, we felt that way. But I hear you.
And so, like, I think this has the potential of being like a historical point for the league that we look back on, like, holy crap, we almost. You know what I mean? Like, things got a little dicey there for a minute, but we pulled through. Mm-hmm. We're a great league. So I think that's probably the direction things will go. Knock on wood.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, look, I think there are challenges to all these leagues. I think as most of you guys have been, I've been in a lot of leagues over the years. So I've seen, what truly capsizes leagues and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think this falls into that first camp, right? I think it's just like, we need some new owners, and hopefully we get really great owners to come in and, like, take up the, the reins and, like, be real active participants in a third team league. Because, like, the ABL and, a 30 team league is a real commitment to a full spectrum of, like, fantasy baseball. Right. So, what we talk about on this show for the most part is prospecting. And, Tyler and Cal do a great job on the Major League Talent Show. And what, competitively what's going on in the actual competition. I focus on the minor leagues. And so, I think the combination of those two things is, like, really what the league is about. Right. And, you got to build for the future. Right.
And,
yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, just that point too, because, like, you look at ABL, it's hosted on the AFN Discord server. There's how many other leagues on there? There's an ABL 4, there's an ARL, there's an ACL. If I'm forgetting any, I apologize. But my point is, there's, it's unfortunate these owners are leaving. Hopefully it's only 3. It could be 4 or 5, who knows? But there's such a strong bench. Not to mention, shout out Lorge. There's Lorge still out there.
Yep. And so,
another point to Jeff being commissioner, because he also runs that league. So we're in very capable hands.
Yeah. And I brought Dylan over from, another league that he and I are in together. And I brought Tom in for the White Sox, who I've known for ages. And who's also in Lorge, but he's also in the league that Dylan and I share. And, that's how Tom came into that league with Dylan and me. And so, like, we all have friends who have been doing this for a long time. And so, I think ultimately we'll be fine, but it's just kind of an interesting thing. And we'll delve into a hot second into the individual rosters that have been left. And I may, prod you guys to revisit this general topic, which is, like, how do we feel about how this particular roster was left? Right. Because, one question I'd like you guys to think about as we go through this discussion that we're about to embark on is, what is your duty as an owner to a league? Right. So we all invest a lot of time in this. Right. And so, like, from my perspective, I will tell you, like, if I leave a league, if I think I'm going to leave a league, right, I feel obliged to not leave the next guy in the lurch. Like, I want to, like, leave them something that they can work with. Mm-hmm. That's my personal perspective.
I don't know if any of you did scouting growing up, but there's a whole premise there called Leave No Trace, which is all about, like, keeping everything clean and tidy so it's in better shape for whoever uses it next.
Yeah. I mean, that's my perspective, right? So it's like, that's my personal perspective. It's not necessarily what everybody should do, but I really feel strongly that you should leave a league, and particularly a dynasty league. Like, there's a commitment that I am making to this collective endeavor. That's my view, right? So we'll touch on this as we go along. And I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to think about that, and how you view this right? And as we're talking about these rosters, like, rightly or wrongly, where have these things been left, right? So with that in mind, let's delve right in, right? So I picked these three assignments because I really wanted to get your thoughts both on the pros and cons of a roster, like what you would want to sell as an owner and what you want to keep on these rosters. And I'm I'm actually entirely focused on really young players. I'm not interested in their major league rosters, right? So I'm interested in their like either minors or guys who just got promoted. Like, who you're putting on the trade block as soon as you have an opportunity to take over this team, and who you're trying to like hold on to, no matter what, right? So let's start, with Dylan. All right. So I've assigned you the Colorado Rockies. Okay.
Yep.
So one of the teams that has, been abandoned, and I put in parentheses, rescued me from nowhere. Right. Because the Rockies have like never been like a playoff contender in the ABL. But I don't think the story is necessarily that bad for where they are right now. So Dylan, what are your impressions of this roster? And maybe you can address like, the kind of players that you're trying to hold on to, the kind of guys you think are valuable, and the dudes you want to jettison.
Yeah. So just taking a quick glance here, they do have a lot of young talent that has proximity, in my opinion, right? A few guys that have come up this season, the likes of Drew Gilbert. You have Parker Messick, who I think wasn't on many radars at all as a pitcher that would be anything outside of maybe even a middle reliever, who is sort of funky lefty with 5 pitches and has shown that he can hold his own at a major league level. Right, he's got 109 location plus across 2025. A piece like that in ABL goes a long way. And the other reason I highlighted Drew Gilbert as well, to this point, I don't think anything has jumped off the page. But if you were to look at MLB Pipeline's grades for him, I would argue this is the picturesque sort of player that can get you the counting stats and numbers you need to help fill out a roster. So we have a hit grade of 50, power 50, run of 55, arm of 60, field of 55, and an overall of 45.
Yep.
Just those grades across the board give me a picturesque player in ABL that I think goes very underappreciated, right? So, and Drew Gilbert has the pedigree to go along with it, right? This is a former first rounder. So a guy like that, who I don't necessarily think you can get top dollar for in a trade, unless someone's thinking the same way I am. I really think a player like that can help fill a lot of holes in a major league roster, and for very cheap too. But on the other hand, you have a guy like Rhett Lauder, who has a lot of name notoriety, I think, just from his flamethrowing ways, not flamethrowing ways, his command ways rather, who is in sort of a tough ballpark, didn't have the best MLB debut by any means, but you may still be able to get a decent offer for if you were to sort of dangle him out there. So a guy like Rhett Lauder, I'd be looking to move if I was the manager of this team. Now, I think the tough thing with taking over this Rockies team is everyone's well aware there's a lot of sharks in this league, right? So when you're looking at a roster that has some decent proximity in their prospects, a guy like Ryan Clifford, who had a lot of notoriety prior to this year, sort of fell off, but seems like he's right back to that sort of, this guy could produce at the MLB level.
Yep.
That's the type of guy that if you're not very keen on prospecting and not on top of it, one of these sharks could swoop in and steal from you, right? And that's a guy that could be up very soon.
Yeah, so let's pause on Ryan Clifford, because this is one of the dudes that I looked at when I looked at this roster. I was like, oh, that's interesting. He has Ryan Clifford. And one of the reasons why it was interesting to me is that he has Bryce Eldridge too. right? And obviously Bryce is just up. He had like a tremendous run at AAA, like leading up to his call up in the major leagues. And I talked about him very recently on one of the podcasts about his strikeout rate and some of the concerns I had for Bryce Eldridge. So when you think about that stacking of a roster at the first base position, right? If you're acquiring this roster, which of those guys are you looking to move? And I'll open this up to the floor. It's not just Dylan. I'm very interested in everybody's perspective. If you had both guys in our format, a 30-team league, right? Given the contracts they have, which is $1 on a $260 draft budget, which escalates to $360, right? And you have the option to extend these guys for 5 years, including an arbitration year, so 6 you can control them for the price they're at. Which of those dudes are you looking to move at this point? So I'll start with you, Dylan, and then I'll open up to the floor.
So let me start by saying I do think the fact that Clifford has left and right field eligibility does help this argument a little bit. I failed in preparing to check where he's played this year and how many games he's played there and whether he can actually stick at a corner outfield position. Obviously, we know Soto's taking up one of those positions. How long that would last, I'm not too certain of.
Right.
But at the same time, you're not hard pressed to move either of them if you're worried about that eligibility right away. And that same thing goes with if you're really trying to time when to move this prospect. If Clifford was the one to go because you wanted to stick with Eldridge, you would really want to wait till he gets a little bit closer to the show, or at least is on the verge of a call up. But at the same time, he does have that multi-position eligibility, which helps a lot. You find that a guy like Dylan Moore, who may have even been dropped in some leagues this size, right? The second he gets re-signed by another team, the fact that he has 4, 5, maybe even 6 position eligibility is huge for a league this size. And especially in a playoff where you're trying to fill any hole possible with a guy that's starting with some depth. So I can see the case for wanting to keep the higher profile guy, Bryce Eldridge, but the 3 position eligibility of Clifford does carry some decent weight there.
You know, I agree with you. I mean, he's an undervalued asset, which may suggest that you should move Eldridge as opposed to Clifford in this format, right? So, John, I'm interested to hear your perspective because you've been here from the ground up and have seen the most lessons learned, in terms of ABL ownership. Like, how do you think about those 2 players?
So I think, actually, before I answer that, I gotta tell you, I'm surprised as I'm going through the Colorado roster. I thought that Kansas City was going to be the jewel of this thing. If you took the teams off and just showed me the rosters and said pick which one you want to be able to win the most over the next 10 years, I'm taking Colorado.
Interesting.
I'm kind of shocked to say that, to be honest with you, especially based because like you said, like they haven't experienced a whole lot of success from a big league playoff or whatever perspective. But this is, I mean, he really turned it around. This is strong. So as far as the question, I think it's a really good idea to move Eldridge at this point if you can. I think Eldridge is very, very sexy, very, very known, plays in a big old market over there. And I think that's the kind of thing, especially right now, that can fetch you quite a bit. Is it possible it backfires? Of course. But I think in a 30-team league, the more you can capitalize on big, exciting prospects and cash them in for a bunch of different pieces. That's if I had to pick between Clifford and Eldridge, I think you're just going to get so much better value for Eldridge.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, like, personally, my philosophy is, and this was like in the Skeens trade and like any other trade of like big.
Are we going to talk about the Skeens trade now?
I think in a league this size, like those players just burn a hole in my pocket. I can't not shop them. And
So what I would say is, like, I completely hear you. on Eldridge being like a hotter commodity. And I think you can definitely get more for him right now than Clifford. There's no question, right? And maybe that's the right move. I suppose for me, the question is, do I really believe in the delta between Clifford and Eldridge? Right? Because like Eldridge has the potential to be a real difference maker, right? Do I think Clifford can? I'm not sure, right? There's the potential, right? But like, and I suppose ultimately at the end of the day, and I'm sure we all agree with this, it's like, what's the return, right?
Yep.
I mean, like, what are you really getting for Eldridge? And if it's worth the candle, sure, pull the trigger, right? But before we all clip it on that comment, Frank, what are your impressions of these two guys, and like, how do you think about it?
Okay, so first and foremost, to answer Dylan's question, in 2020, this is from the Baseball Cube. He has done majorly first base, but he has also played left and right field. So it does look like those positions will stay. Again, whether he plays that in the majors, I'm not sure, but that allows a lot more flexibility for this argument if you don't want to trade him. So I think that's very important to say. I guess just to kind of reiterate, what Dylan and John have said, maybe I would use the word like robust for Eldridge, because being a top prospect, you have a much more strong, like, how do I want to try to say this? Like, not like investment profile, but you're not going to drop as quickly, and more owners are going to know that.
Yep.
Like, more owners are going to know Bryce Eldridge. Versus Clifford, you might get some owners, like you might have a much more range of positions on how they feel about him. So unless you think you're going to get a good return for him, I feel like it would be harder to do that. And especially as specifically a new owner coming in, where it's like, I don't know, like we all kind of know each other's like kind of prospects or kind of history, like a little bit, like we can kind of look at that. We understand that. New owner doesn't. So
Yep.
I think just from a straightforward standpoint, just to kind of simplify it a little bit for a new owner, like if I had to trade someone, it would just be Eldridge, because he has a much more robust profile. And I feel like it'd be easier to get a return for what you're looking for him.
Right. I mean, you might be able to trust the return you're getting in the league context more for Eldridge than you would.
Yeah.
Because maybe you feel like, the nagging question, the splinter in your mind, if you will, is, am I getting fleeced? Right, for Clifford, right? Whereas Eldridge,
he's not getting an offer of Sebastian Walcott for Ryan Clifford, right? He's gonna get the Christian Franklin. Whoa, he's close to the majors.
Yeah. I think that's right, Dylan. And so, Kevin, I'm going to save your powder for the end. Like, I want to save your, like, you're going to be.
I'll just push through. Yeah,
you're going to be the Mariano Rivera of the show. Like, I want to bring you into
this. Sorry, next episode is episode 42, Steve.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The Jackie, but that will be the Jackie Robinson episode, not the Mariano Rivera.
That's fair.
In fairness, right? We got to give Jackie his credit. But fair point. Totally fair point. So, Dylan, like, if you were seeing a new owner come in and taking over the Rockies, and maybe this is just the flip side of what you already said, who would you be targeting to take over, to try to acquire in this format?
Who would I try to acquire from the Rockies?
Yeah.
So I sort of spoke to one of the guys earlier, Parker Messick, who I think could get some decent run. And once again, this comes down to whether this new owner has played in a league this size before and realizes the potential value on the table with a player that cheap. I do think that would be one of the main guys. I mean, William Bergolla is another guy with a little bit of distance before he gets to the MLB, but once again, sort of had the prospect pedigree when he was first signed. I think because of the profile, another guy that doesn't jump off the page power-wise, but in this league could hold his own as sort of a depth infielder. and plays the dirt well. William Bergola, I think, is a guy you could acquire for fairly cheap off a new owner that may not be as prepared potentially. Now I'm leaving a lot of variables on the table, saying that we're going to gain an owner that's terrible. That's not what I mean. I just mean that this is a very unique league. And when I joined, there was nothing that I had ever played similar to this. And I felt like I was really trying to pump the brakes. I say that as someone that moved Samuel Basayo, but I wanted to make sure I was understanding really who was of value in this league and really what they can bring to the table. And I think Bergola is a guy that doesn't jump off the page for a lot of guys.
Yeah. And don't fret about Samuel Basayo, who's amazing. But John moved your parents to me, so it's all good. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. And that joke never gets old. I think Bergola is a guy. Like, it's a very good flag. I think he's a very interesting prospect. Dude who's kind of been up and down on the prospect list, if you will. And maybe it's a little bit further down, but I think you bring up an excellent point, Dylan, which is that a league that is this deep, right, where you have 600 prospects owned and the rosters are constrained as you go into the year, and there's a $260 salary cap for the draft. Inexpensive prospects that can be everyday players, right, have accentuated value, right? And he falls into that camp. Do I think that dude is going to be a star? Probably not. Do I think he'd be an everyday player? Probably. Right? And that has value. So I think it's a very interesting target to me. And that's the kind of thing that I look for when dudes come into this league. Because, everybody and their mother knows, Bryce Eldridge. You're not going to acquire him on the DL. Right? But a guy like him, you're like, all right, well, maybe, you want to give him away, great.
We've spoken about this in previous episodes, you and I, where we spoke about the value of defensive prowess and how that can keep a guy on the field. And I was actually reading a piece the other day, and I wanted to make sure I pulled it up so I didn't botch it, in which was Baseball America posted basically managers voting on the top prospects for specific skills within leagues. And they actually stated that Bergola was the best defensive shortstop per the managers in the AA Southern League. So once again, a guy that clearly the managers are keen to think that he can stick on the dirt and plays a premier position too, right? So those guys are going to get some run.
Yeah, they're going to get playing time, right? 100%. And they're going to get a longer leash at the major league level because they are in the business of run prevention, which managers care about, right? And major league teams care about.
Yep.
So it's an interesting thing in this league context where we have such depth. And this is a dude who may be available in a lot of shallower leagues, but I think he has value in ABL.
Yep.
All right, so that's the Rockies. Let's pivot off of them because I'm conscious of time. And Frank, I want to pivot to you because I've given you the not so attractive task of dealing with the Texas Rangers in our league, right? And so I put in parentheses, this is how you leave me, right? This is like the train wreck, right? So for context, this is a team that tried to go all in and basically traded the farm to try to be competitive, and narrator, it didn't work out. Right? I mean, they're on the outside looking into the playoffs, which is what often happens in a league this deep and this competitive, right? It's very hard to make a run in a head-to-head league in the playoffs by going all in. So perhaps lesson learned, but guys leaving the league. And when you look at this roster, if you were taking it over, and I'll ask you the flip side, is there anybody you would target in this roster? Which maybe the answer is no. But if you're taking over this roster, what dudes on this roster are you looking to hold on to? And what guys might you be thinking about selling?
So I want to answer this question first while I'm still in the train of thought. So this is, and if the timing for it is right, I apologize, but when you asked us about kind of the state of what, leaving a team is, I think this is kind of like maybe the team that reflects that, right? This is the all-in team, and it's kind of just, that there's not a whole lot of meat on the bone, for a new owner to take over. I guess as long as, Sam, the previous Rangers owner, as long as he paid ahead, for 2026 and 2027 for like the picks he traded and stuff, it's technically still like his team that another team's taking over, that they just get the free roll. So as long as that contingency is in place, even if it's very unlikely for a team to succeed for those years, if it's a free team, I know there's definitely, a new owner will probably want to pay for like a Baseball America subscription and other prospect subscriptions and other stuff.
Right.
So there's that factor going into it too. But it does make for drama. I think when a team does go all in, it kind of raises the stakes a little bit, and it does make it more fun. It's fun, especially if that owner stays too. And then you could see like how they do the rebuild. So, I'm kind of, I understand, like taking a look at this roster, it's like, okay, there's not really a lot here, but, I don't want to discourage someone if they want to go all in to go all in, because it does heighten the, it does make it more fun, but there is a consequence to it too sometimes if they're not ready for it. So, okay. Anyway, I do have to mention.
Can I jump in real quick and mention one thing?
Yeah,
I do think too, like to Frank's point, I think Sam has done this in ABL like 2 or 3 times though. And so like I think he is like, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've seen him just do this and then be decimated. And then I kind of stop looking at his team because it's sad. And then 6 months like, oh,
yeah, he's a recidivist.
I want to add, because like ABL, like such a deep league. There's so many ways. Are you going to auction really well? Are you going to prospect really well? Sam was one of my favorites because his solution was to trade his way of a paper bag.
Yeah.
And son of a bitch, it worked.
It was entertaining.
I think he'll go on a run. He would go on a run, make like 5 trades a week. I'm like, after trade 2, it's like, oh, this guy's clearly on crack. What's he doing? And then by the end, I'm like, son of a bitch, he did it again.
Yeah.
Sorry, Frank. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. You're good. No, yeah, and I guess that's what it means. It makes it fun. It heightens it. So, yeah, I definitely don't want to discourage that if owners want to do that. Okay. So I know this is a prospect-focused, kind of podcast, but I do want to talk about the major league roster a little bit.
Sure.
So specifically, there's 2 very big contracts that the Rangers currently have. Rafael Devers is a $48 2026. Juan Soto's a $51 first contract. For a new owner, I would probably, the way I would lean this is like cut Devers, because like, $50 for the type of production Devers isn't really, I think, up to snuff for what he can do potentially.
Sorry, Frank. Just one note, because I was going to touch on this with the Rockies too. Whoever, if you're watching, you are taking over these teams. If you inherit a salary, you can cut it without penalty.
Yes,
as long as you inherited it.
Absolutely. I should have mentioned that too.
Yeah. Also, these are all my notes for the Rangers. So, Steve, I have nothing on the Rangers now. Like verbatim, what Frank is saying is what I was going to say.
Great minds think similarly. It's all right.
But Juan Soto is actually very interesting. So to add to Kevin's point, when you if you extend a contract a certain amount of years, it's $2 inflation. So a Juan Soto, it would be 53 for 2026. Having a budget of 260, that's like, you're flirting around, that's essentially, I think, 20% or maybe a smidge over. But with how much Sam went all in for this, I do think seeing for a couple of years now how like players that have a lot of gravity like Soto, like the really strong players, even on a rental contract, because after the auction for 260, the salary does expand to 360. Good owners will find ways to bring these guys on their team, and you could still get decent returns for them, even if it's 1 year. Right. So I wanted to highlight that because I think that's very important for what is going to be needed to help this new owner build up the prospect pool again.
No, I think it's a very valuable point, Frank. Right? Like you're highlighting a major league player that you can trade potentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
To
Absolutely.
get either draft picks or specs, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. In terms of the prospects, my note is I have 7 prospects listed as like the only ones to kind of keep. No one from looking at just the Baseball America rankings for them is above a 50. Not a single one. So it's all kind of subjective. I think it was Kevin that mentioned Kyle DeBarge as being the 12th ranked Twins prospect. I think they are actually the 12th ranked Twins.
Oh, that was a guess. Awesome.
Yeah, it's like they're between 10 and 15. Like they're right there. But there is some interesting names. Kyle DeBarge being one of them. He's 21 high A. 50 high grade from BA. 55 hit total, 40 power. Didn't really hit for a ton of power this year in high A, but 21 in high A and kind of having some prospect pedigree. It's again, it's kind of more bare bones here for what we're looking at. But again, prospects. He's a little shorter, so I don't know if the power's ever going to really get there. But if the hit tool stays at a 55, he'll get playing time. And as mentioned, playing time in this league is absolutely king. Dominic Keegan, catcher from the Tampa Bay Rays. He's also interesting. 50 hit tool, 45 power, 249, 314, 444 from AAA. The only thing for him is he's 25 years old. So, catcher longevity, that can maybe kind of be a thing, maybe where he fades a little bit faster. But, again, it's kind of,
That's an interesting call out.
Yeah.
I like that one. I mean, not a guy I would target personally, but I'm familiar with him.
I do love this, Frank. You're doing great. And it just sounds like the money ball. This is his thing is.
Yeah. But, the problem is it's 25 and higher, or in AAA. So, it's who knows. A couple other names. Joshua, I don't know if it's Joshua. It's Joswa Lugo. Kind of a high. High upside complex shortstop. 6'3", 187. A lot of projectability. Had a spike in the ground ball rate this year in the complex league to 49.4%, but 18 years old, good size. Has a little pedigree. Definitely can keep an eye on him. The only other prospects really is like Brandon Birdsell, who's kind of like a depth starter. Peyton Martin, from the pitcher from the Dodgers. I think he's from the Dodgers. He's excellent stuff, but just kind of questionable. Like, will he get the command? He could chip to the bullpen.
Yep.
I want to say the corpse of Frank Mazzucato.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he might be doing the Asa Lacey route, a 8.42 walk rate at AA.
And that is such a good comp, the Lacey comp. That's so good.
So
good.
Yeah.
The Royals have had like some really bad luck with pitching prospects, and Mazzucato is one of those dudes, but Lacey is the poster child of like bad turns. That's great.
He was number 2 overall, right? So he was like Lacey, so he
was very high.
Yeah, very, very high. And then the last one is actually super interesting in Sean Sullivan when you look at his stats, but he's Colorado pitcher, and it's just like, what can we really do with that?
That's where Whip goes to die.
Yeah.
Also, am I thinking of the wrong prospect, or does he like struggle to hit 90 on his fastball?
No, that's him. I think he's
okay.
87, 88, something maybe a little bit low. So kind of kitchen.
It's not a good bedfellow for Coors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you about a guy on his Sam's roster, the Rangers roster in our league. So Jake Geloff.
Yeah.
Right? Here's a dude who was like, when he was in this draft class, was getting a little bit of buzz. He definitely got drafted, relatively high in a lot of leagues that we've been in. And so, what are your thoughts on a dude like that who maybe is like a post-type prospect?
It's someone, it kind of goes both ways. Like, I could see if someone wants to see if they could trade him to move on, because he did repeat high A this year. He's 23 years old. The WRC plus for him is 117. So he did do a lot better in high A this year. But it's just kind of one of those things where, he's 23 years old at high A now. So how much stock do you really take in that? So
Yeah,
I can kind of see it both ways. Like if an owner kind of wants it, to your point, like second round draft capital, like good organization. The Dodgers relatively recent. If an owner just kind of wants to do more like laissez-faire, kind of see maybe he picks up from where he left off, I would totally understand that. If an owner wants to shop him and maybe, they could say like, hey, Dodgers organization, 117 WRC plus, 230 ISO, 26, 0.5% K rate, and they want to do that, I'm good with that too. So, not to like try to take a stance on that, but I kind of see it both ways with someone like him, where it's not like, I think like, it's worth mentioning for keeping that player like specifically to, all right, kind of see what happens, where, versus the other hitters like Keegan, DeBarge, Lugo, where I would feel more strongly about like, all right, you definitely got to hold these guys.
Right. I get it. So
yeah, no, I like the call out though.
Yeah, so I'll just pause briefly on two things that you said, and listen to what you're talking about: age versus level. Right. So this is something I harp on all the time: age versus level. Like, are they like older than the competition or younger? Right. So Geloff is the guy that you're fading because he's older than the competition, right? And they're, this is like a constant theme for me, right? I also want to talk a little bit about the Dodgers for a hot second, right? I think that they're actually now an organization that gets overhyped in terms of their prospects. Like, let's all think creatively about the last Dodger prospect that came up and established themselves as a star in the major leagues, as opposed to a disappointment. Right?
Oh yeah, Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, Clayton Kershaw. Okay, and then like I'm not being facetious. I mean,
maybe Will Smith, but
yeah, Will
the
Smith
buck stops there.
The last dude, right?
Yeah,
Will Smith is probably the last dude. Like Gavin Lux, disappointment. There's a long list.
Emmett Sheehan's trying to make a case, but
you're
right though.
Yeah.
I'm not closing the book. I'm just saying that I think there's a certain mythology amongst dynasty owners that the Dodgers are a good prospect organization. I think they're very good at identifying athletes. I am not convinced, as I'm sitting here today, they're very good at developing baseball players.
It might come back to that market thing, right? Like they have some exciting raw tool sets, and then they have a ton of fans.
Yeah.
And so
also there's also just less room to break through because it's you're not playing first base, you're not being a DH/starting pitcher, you're not being a shortstop, so there is less room for them too. But no one's knocking down those limited doors.
Yeah, but you see a guy like Alex Freeland, right, who came up and was like, pretty good prospect. Maybe he gets traded and ends up being a good ball player somewhere else. But like, I've seen this story. I've seen the narrative of these guys coming up. I hope and actually believe that Dalton Rushing is going to be a player, right? But like, there's a chance he's like nobody. For the Dodgers. So I just want to pause briefly. It's like I'm not buying into that narrative anymore. That the Dodgers are actually a developmental organization. And I'd be very interested to see how Baseball America dings them in the rankings, because I think there's something to be said for actually delivering on this talent. And there are other organizations that are very good at it. And trade for dudes and develop them into something when everybody gave up on them. I mean, the Padres are another organization that is extraordinarily good at acquiring talent and then misjudging them and trading them away. Right? I mean, the major leagues is littered with young stars who are former Padres. So we'll see. I just wanted to pause. I'm not picking on you, Frank, in any way.
Yeah,
right?
no. It's definitely an interesting point. Like you make some good points. No, I definitely have to look at that more. But I kind of to your point, and then I'm sure there's owners that would still believe that though, and you can maybe sell that a little bit.
Oh, I agree. That
what I mean. So it's perception versus reality. Especially.
No, I agree with that 100%. You definitely still sell that Dodgers mystique, right? And like, just like, oh, he's a Dodger pitching prospect. I'll sell him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Great organization. Look at where they rank.
Yeah.
Where they
100%.
rank,
I agree
so,
with you. I agree with you. All right, so let's transition now, right?
If I could put one last thing out there
on
on this list of prospects here. When I look at this team, it makes me just go, oh yeah, him. Yeah, like he has a ton of players that at one point or another might have popped for just a blip and then come back to earth, right?
Yeah.
We spoke to a couple of them, Peyton Martin, Frank Mozzicato, another one here, Braylon Morrell, right? Like we were ready to anoint him after the DSL, and what's he done since? Nothing. I was the biggest Carlos De La Cruz guy.
I was
out of a bag.
Yeah, he was a top 10 Philly, I think, at one point. And
Aaron Zavala has the name value, right? Victor Barracoto, right? Like I feel like, I don't know if we have any Wire fans here, but when Wee-Bey goes, oh, what? Like every time I look at the players, I'm like, yeah, I've heard the name. I remember it, but it's not, when you go to look him up, you're like, there's nothing here. There is nothing here.
Yeah. So Barracoto is the guy I traded to Sam. Right?
I was going to make a comment on that first. So a lot of Sam's prospect, it's kind of like the 1899 Cleveland Spiders. They're Steve's reject prospects, where Steve is a great prospector, is on them early, realizes they might not work out. While this name still has a little flicker, who am I going to trade them to? Yep. So if you go through that prospect list, there's I didn't actually go through them all. I couldn't do that to myself. You're going to see a lot of traded from Baltimore Orioles.
Oh, yeah. No, it's high. The correlation is very high. Yeah. I won't lie about that. Like there's a lot of guys that I've like pushed over. Like, Barracoto is one of them. Zavia is not a dude that I gave to Sam, but I think he's another good call out. Like he's a guy who a few years ago was kind of like, an interesting flyer and was getting a lot of, move up various rankings, which is why I don't believe in rankings, like in these terms of these lists. But, I think that's a good call out, Dylan, that he's a dude that you're like, oh yeah, that dude.
Right. Like, oh wait, he can't play the field. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, he's yeah, but I agree with you. There's like a lot of like not even has-beens on this roster, like that. There's like the maybe could have bees, and then here's where we are.
I know. Surely I just signed my fate on Braylon Morrell, and he's going to pop now. That would be great.
Well, that could also.
Hey, that's good for the new owner company.
Who are we to judge, right? Maybe all these guys that I like to, shipped off to Sam will be all stars. Like, I am often reminded of the very important leveling quote when considering prospecting, which is that you know nothing, Jon Snow. Right. So just like we should all be, humble in the face of that. But with that in mind, let's transition to a roster that's much more rosy as we look at it today, which is the Kansas City Royals in our league, which is like owned by the former owner known as as Brandon. And he's actually currently in the World Series playing against Jeff, who we mentioned earlier on the show, which is a redo of the 1985 actually Major League World Series, the Cardinals versus the Royals. And as a Cardinals fan, I'm hoping that Jeff wins just because of that. But putting that aside, I assigned to John the enviable task of picking and choosing amongst the riches that Brandon has, because he is like in many ways done it right. He won the league a couple years ago, and as we entered into 2025, in my handbook that I published, I had him ranked as the number 2 prospecting organization as he was coming into the year. So he has a lot of talent, right? Both at the major league level and the minor league level. And some of these dudes have graduated now. So he had Sam Basayo, who Dylan was kind enough to trade to him for whatever reason. And, now he's on Sam's roster. He's now in the major leagues. So, John, what are your impressions if you were a team taking over this roster? Like, who would you safeguard and not trade for anything on the face of the earth? And who are the dudes that you might be looking to move?
Yeah, so it's funny that we talked about Aldridge earlier, because it's pretty easy to look at him and Basayo sort of together because they came up within like a month of each other.
Yep.
And where I would be looking to move Eldridge, I think Eldridge probably has a bigger profile than Basayo, but I think Basayo has a much safer skill set. So for a league like this, I would lean pretty heavily towards Basayo. I would never, you never say never to dealing somebody, but I would probably not be inclined to shop him. And by the way, also, like if you're a new owner and you're shopping either Basayo or Eldridge, get ready for 20 freaking Discord. Like you have a new part-time job, and that is fielding offers and just pouring through prospect lists. So like I would say I would probably lean towards holding on to him. And I honestly, I didn't see a whole lot that I would be trying to move on this team from a prospect perspective. I think maybe Esteban Mejia. I'm not sure.
Sure. The pitcher for the Orioles, who got a lot of publicity this summer, kind of like popped out of nowhere. Baseball America is an organization that like was really promoting it, right?
Yeah, and like,
go ahead.
No, you're right, and I think that like it's risky, but if I'm going to move anybody, it's going to be somebody who just flashed and seems to possibly be like settling in a little bit, where the hype is dying down a little bit. I think for some that hype might still be very much there, and that's the kind of person where I think a lot of times GMs feel like I've got something over on this guy. He doesn't know about this guy yet, right? Like it's still close enough to when he popped that it might be attractive. I think though, I mean, gosh. Like I know he's not technically a prospect anymore, but I think Brooks Lee is somebody who's made for real life and this league. Because Brooks Lee seems like
that's interesting. Tell me about that.
I think again, like I think if this was a 12-teamer, Brooks Lee might never see a roster. But in a 30-teamer, he's gonna get playing time. I think worst case scenario for Brooks Lee is that he's like 6th position eligible for a long, long time because he's never a full starter. But I do think that there's a chance that he develops for another year and a half and he ends up becoming an above average big leaguer. I mean, the pedigree is absolutely there. And he has a lot of we were talking about the fielding skills earlier. He has a lot of those skills that don't necessarily show up in our scoring system, but absolutely lock in playing time in some form or fashion. So like if I had Brooks Lee, I might be in a weird way hoping that he doesn't realize his full offensive potential. So he can get that like Willie Castro coming off the side of the page eligibility.
Yep.
So
what's our No, I was going to ask you about 2 other guys on that roster that caught my attention as I was preparing for the show. Bryce Rayner.
Yeah.
One of the dudes. And Chase DeLauder.
So that might be the one that I trade, actually, DeLauder. Rayner first, like as a Tigers fan. I'm obviously pretty excited about Rayner. I can't imagine his value is going. It's likely that his value will never be lower than it is now with his injury status. And so I would have a hard time dealing him unless somebody backed up a truck. I just don't think now is a very good time at all. And so I would cling tightly to him unless you get a shocking offer. DeLauder, I don't know. Like the injuries just scare the crap out of me. And I think he's valuable. I don't think he's without.
I mean, I think he like pretty much had like a hit in every game in AAA for like a month and then got injured. It was like, why is he not in the majors? Like he clearly has nothing to practice. I think he was like, he might have been hitting around 400 and just with power. And then he got hurt again.
And maybe he just really doesn't like playing in the minors, and he's like, "Look, I'm."
It was like Bubba Chandler. Bubba Chandler was like, "I'm done with it." He's like, I want to play Major League, right?
Like, he finds something heavy in the locker room, drops it on his foot, and says, I'm out. I'll be in the training room for a while."
Like what you're saying, John, is he's like a soccer player. He's taking a penalty in soccer. That's what we're talking about here, right? And we're like, oh, I fell down and I can't get up. Yeah, I got it.
So I don't know that I would be in a huge hurry to move him, but I would be more inclined to move DeLauder than others, because again, like he was really like he had a pretty high profile for a while there, and I know it's been muddied lately, but you never know. Like some people might still like some folks might be really still kind of excited about that. But I would say like I'll rattle off a couple other folks like Ralphie, and I think you and I talked about Ralphie Velasquez a couple of weeks ago, Steve.
Sure.
I think that I would be thrilled to have him. Slade Caldwell, I think, has a profile built for this league. I think he'll be really, really. I think he's going to be at least a starter for quite a while. And then, you know who else I might deal if I could get the right return. And this is risky, but Logan Henderson.
Sure. Yes.
Because he was amazing, right? And then mysteriously, I mean, he got hurt, but even before getting hurt, they were like, no. You're doing a little too well here. We're gonna go make a playoff push without you. So we're gonna banish you for a while. And then he finds the same heavy object that DeLauder finds. I don't.
Yeah, so let's just play that out for a hot second, John, because not everybody follows the ABL who might be tuning into this, and so look, Logan Henderson is a guy, right, who is not a household name prospect, who ended up pitching pretty well in the major leagues before he got hurt, right? And in a 30-team league, a guy who has an inexpensive contract, who is delivering points every time he goes out to start, is extraordinarily valuable, right? So if you're a new owner coming into this league and you do not fully appreciate what it is to bid at an auction for starting pitching, which, as I think we all recognize, is insanity at the auction, right? The major league auction, right? Logan Henderson's a guy who has a lot of value, right? And I don't know what kind of pitcher he's going to be, but I'm relatively confident in saying is that he's a dude who's going to deliver value in the ABL. Is he ever going to be an anchor in like a 20-team Dynasty league? I'm not convinced of that. But in a 30?
Yeah. Oh, I think you're probably right if injuries aren't too big of a problem. What I'm thinking is that if somebody gets really excited over the relatively small big league sample size and thinks he's going to be more than like a number 3 or a number 4.
Oh, you deal him.
Then capitalize on that now.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, right? If you're coming in as a new owner, I think it's very hard to appreciate that, what you're saying, right? As a new owner. I think as a guy who's like, let's say Josh, for example, who came back into the ABL, right? Took over like a horrible roster for the Seattle Mariners. I think if he was inheriting this roster, this is a guy, Logan Henderson, who's be like, I can get a fortune for this dude in this league, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Well,
But are you going to get the offers though? Is what's tough. And even if he ends up in a long relief role, Logan Henderson has QA7 written on his forehead.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a guy that even if he's not starting, like you said, could still deliver the points. And are you getting the value back that you would want? I don't know.
I will say I don't know what's going to look like once trades open up after the playoffs are gone. But going into the trade deadline, I could have taken a potato out from my pantry, put a pitching mid on it. I could have gotten a first-round pick. So the market is there for pitching. I don't know if it's going to be when we open up again, but
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the pitching's king in the ABL, and which is why Kevin, I think when you were on the show, we talked about the trade we made, Josh Young for
Brandon Walter, who immediately
got hurt. And I actually made a joke about that. He was going to get hurt immediately, which he did. But pitching's king in the ABL, right? And it's the inexpensive pitching is so valuable in this league. But let me just push back on the Bryce versus DeLauder thing for a second, John. Right? So from my perspective, Chase DeLauder is a guy I'm basically out on at this point, right? Because I think the expectation of an owner who has him, right, is I have to hold this dude unless I actually get something worthwhile moving him for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as an owner potentially acquiring a dude like Chase DeLauder, I have some real concerns that he's ever going to stay on the field. Right.
I think it comes down to whether or not somebody is attached to the old profile.
No, I agree with you, but I'm just saying, as a person that has been punished by making bad decisions in the past on these types of profiles, I'm I'm looking at a guy like this. I'm like, he's Anthony Rendon. Like I just don't like, when is he going to play?
I think he likes baseball. That might be a little too far, Steve.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Like I'm just not convinced he's ever going to get on the field. So I hear you that you might be able to still sell him to somebody else. What I'm pushing on is like, if the guy that interests me on this roster is Rayner, right? And and the reason he interests me, right, is because like I was high on him going into the draft last year, and he's like, he is the quintessential buy low to me on this roster, right? If a new owner comes in who's not a Tigers fan, so let's put you to the side for a hot second, right? Like I'm like, how do you feel about Bryce Rayner? And like, my roster is like deplete of like major league talent right now. So I got nothing to trade at the major league level, but maybe there's a prospect they like. But going to Frank's point earlier, like if the dude likes Juan Soto at $53 or whatever, like I'm doing that deal in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm like, oh yeah, you want Juan Soto? Here, Bryce Rayner straight up. Like
absolutely,
100%. Right? I'm like, great, take Juan Soto off my hands, right? And by the way, do you want anybody else who's high priced off my roster? Like, sure, I'll throw them in. Like, but
and this team, I know we're not talking about the big league assets that much, but like, there's a few. We were talking about the Juan Soto thing, kind of moving him before extending. There's a few players like that on this roster. I would, I think you could make pretty good cases for dealing Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, and Kevin Gausman, especially with the pitching concern, like the pitching market.
Yeah,
you could probably get a shit ton of picks at least for all those players, and then he has enough pitching to be able to survive, I think, through the auction with dealing those players away, and then just really going nuts on the farm system from there. So like, and I want to, one other person I'll mention, Justin Robleski. I think that's a kind of a quiet, maybe sneaky asset that I would target that as not to like feed the assassin more information that he probably already has, but I would that's not somebody that I would go after. And if I'm the new owner, I would be really hesitant to deal him, because I don't think, for some reason, I don't think he's gotten as much exposure.
That's interesting.
In LA, he's been
the ultimate buy low, right? Like the guy who's like a sleeper pick that you like, and I think that's a shrewd dynasty move. Like, is to find a guy that you really like for whatever reason, and you're just like, well, maybe this dude just doesn't give a hoot about this player, right? Maybe you can pluck him. All right. Well, this is very interesting. So, Kevin, you've been waiting very, very patiently.
I even took some notes.
There you go. So Kevin is in the Hannibal Lecter position of the show. By the way, just as an aside, I have a little parentheses for Kevin. I still love you in the morning, and this is like, I'm gonna like, take care of business, right? Put that to the side for a second. So I'm here in Virginia for a trial, and there is a young lawyer here who's working with me on this case, and she did not know the Faba Beans quote from Silence of the Lambs. And I was deeply troubled for the youth of America.
Are you feeling old?
Well, I already feel old, Kim. just to be clear, every morning when I get out of bed, I feel old. Put that to the side, right? I mean, as Aerosmith said, all the lines in my face are getting clearer. Yeah, put that to a side. Like, it is the number one quote from that movie. All right. And it is one of the greatest movies of all time.
I don't know. I think some lotion and some basket has something to say about
that. That is also, but if you go look in Google, like, that is the number one quote.
Yeah.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah. And so the lotion in the basket is not far behind it, but that is the number one quote, right?
I really thought we were avoiding toxic Discord stuff today, so we're not talking what's a classic for movies. I know that's a hot topic.
I know. I think we can all agree that it's a great movie. It's one of the few films that has won all the major Oscars.
It's a fantastic movie.
I mean, come on.
Steve, I would pay to see the interaction where I'm hoping you like did the in full character the Fava Beans quote at this young woman?
Oh, I did.
And her blank stare. Like
I hope she didn't misread the Chianti part.
Oh no, I did the whole thing, and there's actually a bottle of Chianti down the hall, which I'm going to bring to her later. And I also quoted like "Get Him to the Great," where I said, "Don't be proud of your ignorance." So it was full on. It's full on. Anyway, that's an aside. I have deep concerns about the future of this country for a lot of reasons, not to get into political stuff at all. But like I have deep concerns. All right. Put that to the side for a hot second. So Kevin, let's recenter this on fantasy baseball and prospecting in particular. You've been listening all night to these very excellent lawyers in our league. I know you've like perused these like rosters and thinking about it, and I had assigned to you the task of like, all right, you're the vulture, right, coming in, and you're like, how am I going to screw this new owner on each team? And I'm very interested to hear, which is why I'll still love you in the morning. That's the parentheses for your segment. What are you thinking?
All right, so we're going to start with the Rockies, right? Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on like the Rockies are in a very good spot for first base. All their bad contracts for hitters that they can drop without a penalty have first base eligibility. And yeah, then they got to decide between Eldridge and Clifford. I'm going to start the prospect I'd buy because they didn't get mentioned. I was surprised. The perfect kind of guy for this league, Ben Hess.
Oh, interesting. Sure.
Was the first name that jumped out to me. Big frame, big power, improving control, just video game numbers. Non-zero chance he's up next year. Mm-hmm. And like with that, like again, there's a little control stuff that has been getting better, but also like big stuff, big strikeout numbers, and strikeouts play.
Yep.
So I mean, as far as like a prospect to buy, that was like the flashing lights on that. Like, yeah, 23 AA, pretty much dominating AA. Like, will be in AAA probably to start it next year.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that was the one buy prospect. For Sell, full disclosure, when I was on for Steve, my fade was Blake Mitchell. So obviously I would sell him. You know, I'm not going to say for a 5th round pick, that's a little too much, but like, obviously Blake Mitchell. So I need to get into that. The other prospect I wanted to highlight is, and this one could bite me in the ass later. Braylon Payne.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. First full year, came on Bowl in the China shop, and is still like 19, full season ball, so still young, could recover. They go month by month. More often than not, he's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's good, he is very good. But given that there's still helium and like it's a name, I said the name, people are like, oh yeah, I know Braylon Payne. So I wanted to highlight him as a name I would sell. Not that he could pan out still, but I'm skeptical enough. And it's early enough before the ramp where I could get good value to sell him. So yeah, that would be, yeah. So and obviously Blake Mitchell, I don't need to get into too much. Honestly, first, as far as the Clifford Eldridge debate, if I had to trade one, probably Clifford. But I mean, they really don't seem like an either-or situation.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Go ahead. Finish.
Which I say a bit of a cop out, but I just like there's very, especially how this roster is constructed, there's very clearly room for both.
Yeah.
Just looking at the prospects, like the ones that are going to come up soon, there's really nothing else in the first base pipeline besides those two. There's corner outfield, which don't really see an impact outfielder in the minors. That's like ETA close. So like they both fit well on this roster.
Yeah, let's just pause there for a second. I know we talked about this earlier in the show, right? So, like, I would much rather personally bet on Eldridge than Clifford. I'll tell you why. Okay. So, one of the things I consider in the handbook putting this together is position, right? And, like, what are the chances of this person, like, producing above average value? as we go forward versus replacement value that I can get somewhere else. Okay. I am not convinced, as I'm sitting here today, and I could be wrong, that Ryan Clifford is going to be a plus major league player, an everyday player at either position, corner, outfield, or first base. There is a significant non-zero chance that Eldridge is a plus player. And the reason I say that is because his power is insane. In a way that, as good as Clifford's power is, it is better for Eldridge. There is also a chance that Eldridge, is Joey Gallo and never lives up to his, power potential because he has significant contact issues. Significant, right? I'm cognizant in the ABL that it's not a batting average league. Walks matter. Power matters.
And also you do not lose points for strikeouts.
Right. So if I'm betting on one of those dudes, I don't want to have both of them, I guess is what I'm saying. Right? You could there's a scenario in which one of them plays first base and the other plays a corner, or they both play both. And you could roster both of them, but in our format, you're going to have to give them contracts. Right? And do I really want to buy into both of those guys when I can trade one of them for something? And I think the only question for me as a Dynasty owner is is the delta on Eldridge, trading him now, so much higher that I'm getting real value in return, right? That I think I'm doing better. Go ahead, John. I guess you want to say something. Oh, you're muted, John.
Sorry. Can you imagine, and it's going to happen any day now, can you imagine how the hype is going to skyrocket as soon as that gigantic human hits a home run?
Oh, yeah, I agree.
And everybody's going to be like, oh, look.
Yeah, all it takes is one viral video of him launching because his power is unquestionable, right? I mean, but I think to a point that somebody was writing, I think it might have been you, John, Basayo versus Eldridge. I would much rather have Basayo, right? Because and he's hitting under 200 right now. But that kid, I'm buying.
Yeah.
And nobody's selling that. Nobody. Yeah. Right. But Eldridge is a guy you can buy right now potentially. If he struggles going into he's got a 2-week call up, maybe you can buy him in the offseason. He interests me. But I don't know. I mean, Clifford scares the heck out of me. I caught him in Lord, by the way. Clifford.
And I traded him in ABL.
So go ahead. I interrupted you, Kevin. Please continue.
Sorry. The other thing with Clifford, the biggest word on him, not his talent. Unless the Mets let Pete Alonso walk, where is he going to play? He's got first base, left field, right field, which is Soto, Nimmo, Alonso. Maybe you hope Soto's a DH, but I don't think they're going to DH him starting next year.
Yeah.
So then is he a reserve DH guy? But then you're competing with your Beatty, your Mauricio, and are you better than all those guys? So the Mets are running into a situation where not a lot of spots. The most available spot, it turns out Jeff McNeil is better than all the Mets prospects right now. Who knew?
Yep.
Guy can hit. I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Clifford, if you can get something decent for him, sure. I just
Yeah, I think that's the question. Is I don't know what I'm getting from Ryan Clifford right now because I was saying the league that you and I are in, Lorge, I cut him.
Yeah, 300 prospects. That's about where he'd go.
Yeah, that's a 16-team league, right? And I was just I don't know what I'm doing with him instead. I would not cut him in ABL, just to be clear, because he's definitely worth holding on to in that format. But Eldridge, in contrast, is the guy I'm not cutting. Anyway.
But is Eldridge $3?
Yeah, well, Eldridge is $3 in ABL. That's
Rainer
true.
is.
Oh, Eldridge is 2, actually.
Oh, he's 2? Even better. God bless him. So, all right, so let's transition. That's the Rockies. Let's talk about the Rangers and the Royals. The Royals is kind of easy, so I'm interested in what you're thinking about the Rangers.
Okay, the Rangers, I'm going to open reading from the ABL Constitution, Section 2.5, FYPD compensation picks. It is ugly. It's just the one prospect, and this is, I will say, he needs a surgery. It is unclear what surgery it is. If it's a UCL, I change my mind. I do have some interest in Brandon Birdsell. There's a fair amount of opportunity in that Cubs rotation going forward.
Yep.
And he was looking pretty, like, not great, but he's looking good before his season-ending surgery. But they haven't said what it is. So, again, it could be UCL and scrap all this. But
Right.
the point with that is, unless you're like a top 5 prospect, all the prospects have warts. And these prospects just have like warts on their warts, and it's
Yeah. They're like a a clinic next to the the bad area of town, right? They're like the testing that's going on there.
Like whoever gets his team, whoever gets his team better know prospects deep. There's 4 picks in the 5th round, but again, like if you're like there's value in the 5th round. It's not really a death sentence.
Sure.
I think when I actually joined APL, I had 4 picks in the 5th round. I think 2 of them are actually good, which is nice. It's a great hit rate for
20% in the 5th round.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dylan, one of them was Aiden Smith, just so you know.
Aiden Smith, I can't believe I fell that far. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I mean,
The only other note I have for the Rangers is not really prospect related. Is going back to earlier points, the idea of paying for future years and assume those years are paid for, it's fine. And if they weren't, and you have to pay, you're probably banging the door for a dispersal draft.
Yeah.
Which then brings up the question that Dylan brought up at the beginning, and I don't know the answer, but like, if it's 3 teams, sure, take over the rosters. But if we have 5, 6, 7 teams, is a dispersal draft an option? It's like, what number of new owners does that become?
Right. These are questions only Duke can answer to the extent he's involved.
Our stepfather Jeff could.
Yeah.
Well, I will say with Jeff, it's now defunct, but Flug, we actually did a dispersal draft one year. I think it was like 5 or 6 out of 16 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I picked next to Tony, and that was like a religious experience. Like at some point, I figured out who he was picking in my head, and I felt like I learned a new language.
Yeah. I joined Flug and never got to participate because it collapsed the year I joined. So I must be bad karma or something.
Oh, Jeff was a juggernaut. I was excited as a new team. I was beating him for 3 months, and that was a huge deal.
I missed that.
And I finished in 8th, so it wasn't like I was good.
Yeah. All right, so let's transition and close the show with the Royals. Like,
Steve, if I could add one thing about the Rangers there, and I kind of wanted to relate it back to our conversation about Logan Henderson. I do think Peyton Martin maybe is an underappreciated asset on that team.
Sure.
I was hesitant to bring this up because if the new owner is watching this, I'm surely going to be sending low ball offers. Just because it's enough of a dart throw where, you know what, if he makes it into the starting rotation by some sheer act of God, great. If he's a long reliever, also great. That could work out. I think the stuff is decent. It may not be starter quality, but it could play up in the ABL.
No, that's entirely fair, Dylan, and I appreciate the idea that somebody who came into the league would be watching my podcast like in next seasons. I really do appreciate that.
When I joined, I went back and watched some of the older episodes.
God bless you. God bless you.
I had to understand what some of the things were.
I was a huge nerd because I joined right. I think I knew I was joining, and then trades opened up January 1st, so I spent most of Christmas week watching the old episodes.
Oh, this is amazing! I feel so empowered by this. This is like awesome.
I mean, I also did the same thing too, and like I specifically remember like when I said I was trying to watch podcasts, and I look at trade history, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening in this league. And I forgot who it was, but they were like, that is the understatement of like the century, just because of how just crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I feel validated now. I feel seen. So this is great. We might as well start right now.
And Steve, just tying to like the top of the show, like the idea of like the state of the league and how healthy it is. Like people join, and like we're all lovely people. We're huge nerds. Like you don't do Dynasty baseball if you're casually into baseball.
Do you ever try to explain this to other people?
I can barely explain it to my wife, who has like extreme patience for all this stuff.
I tried once. I got that exact tone of "ooh, that's nice," but then realized never saying it again.
Yeah.
But like John said, like, it's like a group of friends online community because nobody I see day to day knows baseball like this.
Yeah, when I tell my colleagues that I have a podcast, they're like, "Oh, really? Like, what is that on?" And I tell them they're like glassed over. They're like,
Like,
"Oh,
what? It doesn't register. Yeah.
yeah, like can you send me a link? I'm like, sure. Like, you're never gonna watch this, but like, sure, I'll send you a link. Here you go.
The closest I've come is it's like Dungeons and Dragons for X and wannabe jocks.
There you go. That's what it is. That's what it is. That
Want to be
is very
GMs.
good.
Yeah.
That's
That
right.
is
Yeah.
That is very good.
I play Dungeons and Dragons on Wednesdays, and that's pretty accurate.
I'm learning so much right now. So I have a colleague who's a Dungeons and Dragons DM, like mastery. This is what he does, like on his spare time. So, this is good. This is good. Well, I really appreciate all you guys spending so much time.
Do we still have to do the Royals?
Well, we do. I mean, like, I want to hear, like,
I thought my team was going to get stay intact.
yeah, who you really want to, like, assassinate on the Royals or take away from them.
I don't know if assassinate's the right word. Whoever, if you're watching,
shit. I didn't
the
even
Royals,
make that connection. Jesus.
That's really funny, actually. But, we'll park that to the side too. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to throw a
Unintended.
disclaimer heretofore. I was not thinking in that kind of.
Neither was I. Let's put that to the side. Like, not intended at all. So
I'm
go
going
ahead.
to move on.
Yes, let's move on. Yes.
Yeah, whoever's taking over the Royals, if you're watching this team is like doing this exercise. The Rockies were the most interesting team in that I think we all the consensus they're in much better shape than we realize. The Royals are loaded. They were always loaded. They might be the championship roster, I think, as of now, barring a comeback from Jeff. Like, this team is loaded. Clearly did their homework over the years. A lot of pop-up prospects, a lot of arrow-up prospects. Like, their 20th prospect ranks well against the team's, like, 12th prospect. It's absurd. Yep. As far as Stell, a couple of names that pop out, just not even a specific name. They just have a cluster of currently shortstops that are 19 to 20 years old, and there's 4 of them. So we talked about Bryce Rayner, but I know Ty Pete had helium. JD Dix is somebody who I remember because in the draft last year, it was like middle of the second round. I was between 2 names, Johnny Level and JD Dix. Turns out they were both the right answer. And I took Level, and I had Level, then a pick, then the other pick. It's like there's gonna be perfect. Level, boom, sniped on JD Dix. But like, again, also fantastic. And Vargas is the one I know the least about. And again, we talked about the Dodgers prospect, but just having a glut, like pretty much too much of a good thing. Like, these are prospects people want. So as far as sell one of them, my other selling prospect was also Mejia for all the reasons John said. I have absolutely nothing to add to that. There's a chance 2 years from now he's the number 1 pitching prospect in baseball, but
yeah, I'm Mortimering that from trading places. Sell.
The other thing I will add to that is Daniel Egan is, I believe I could be wrong, the most recent pop-up prospect that this team has. A lot of buzz about him lately. That could be a name if you want to sell. Just this team has options. Also, Chase DeLauder, I have no idea what the answer is. As far as a buy, again, I think you touch on Slade Caldwell. Most of these guys are buy in some level. It's just a matter of preference.
Yep.
Even Tony Blanco is on this, probably one of the bottom prospects and might be nothing, but he's got MLB power.
Yeah, Tony Blanco is also one of my guys who I picked up on top. He's the dude that making the rounds, and right now he's favored. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up, but he's another first base prospect.
Yeah, he might be nothing, but again, if your best trade is power plays.
He does play. We'll see. I mean, but he's actually an interesting guy. So let's talk about Tony for a hot second, right? I mean, for Brandon's roster, he's kind of a throwaway. But if you're if I were a guy, in our league, and I saw Brandon's roster, and a dude was coming in and trying to like challenge at different positions or thinking about what he wanted to do. Flacco's actually a guy I would target in our league, right? Because it really depends on the acquisition cost, right, and how much he believes in it. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, Flacco is on an upswing in his value.
That's a bit of a theme with this team's prospects.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, so he sold out some of his guys, and he went out and picked up, because he's a very shrewd owner. Went out and picked up some guys who were hot, right? So what I'm looking for are dudes that are to come down. And I'll give an example, right? So I am very glad in some respect that Brandon is leaving the league. All right. Totally not personal. It's
John might finally win the division regularly.
right.
I was going to say, you're glad.
Yeah. So it's with complete respect, but also out of self-interest. So he would routinely snipe me on prospects in the draft. Right. So when you're talking about Johnny Level or whoever else in the draft, like Noah Schultz, like that killed me when he drafted Noah Schultz, like right before me in the draft. And so I finally acquired Noah Schultz from him this year, who has been struggling mightily. And I will tell you, like, that was a buy low, right? I would have never been able to acquire Noah Schultz from Brennan if he had not been struggling at AAA, right? Because the other guy on his roster that I really wanted was Pasayo. And I knew that was never happening, right? So I was like, all right, Noah Schultz. So the dudes that are buy lows on these rosters, they really interest me.
Yeah, this, in general, it's really a marvel to do this in a 30-team league. Like, you could have told me this is a 16-team roster, I believe you. It's so sustainable. Like, this is a team that bought this year, still has all this, and whoever takes this over, you can keep being this, on top of things and keep it sustainable. You could sell some MLB pitchers for better. You could sell some like, you can really go. Like, the Rangers are kind of forcing this stuff. Although I do want to, one nice thing that the Rangers want to go back to. I believe last year we had a couple of new owners. New owner for the Atlanta Braves, Aiden. I haven't talked to Aiden that much. If I had to rank all 30 teams going to the draft last year, the Braves are like bottom 3. Team made the playoffs, so whoever takes over the Rangers, anything is possible. Aiden did a fantastic job with that team. Yeah. So it's not always hopeless. You just got to draft really, really, really well.
Yeah, no, you can level it out for sure in the ABL. There's,
but to the point, the Royals, you can go whichever way you want if you take over this team. Whereas, the other teams, you're a bit. Well, the Rockies have some flexibility. The Rangers, you're pretty tied into a couple of one direction, and hope for the best.
Yeah. The Royals are an embarrassment of riches, right? So good for Brendan. I think we can all sleep better at night knowing that he's not going to be competing against us, but he will be in many respects sorely missed. And I suppose
really all 3 of these guys will. I mean,
yeah. So we can blame Evan, and that's fine. We have not mentioned so far in the podcast, but that we'll leave it there. And we all know what I'm talking about. See, I can see from the reaction. You're like, all right, yep, that's right. So there you go.
I didn't even get into. I think I mentioned this to Steve when I joined ABL. That's kind of why I signed up for this right away. I joined one of 3 teams at the same time. I joined with Brian and the Diamondbacks and Evan and the Astros, and I took over the Rays. And I had the receipts, but I had to pull them out from our conversation with Duke, where they were going, who wants what team. I immediately took the worst team. I mean, you've met Evan. He needs the help more than I do. And I could say that because I have that pizza bet with him. So I am putting my money where my mouth is.
There you go. I love the throwdown. I'm sure Evan will react to that. Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate everybody taking the time this evening. I know we're a little late in the evening. We've been going on for a while, but I think this is a really interesting discussion. Hopefully folks who end up watching it think so as well. Probably the last guest podcast I'm going to have this year. Probably have one more where I just talk about the ABL handbook for next year and the changes I'm thinking about making. But I think this is a good way to end the season, and we'll see what happens. And probably the next time I'll see people is to do a first-year player draft preview. But I'll probably do a little stopover to talk about the handbook before the end of the season after my trial ends. But in the interim, I want to remind everybody and all of you watching at home, ABP, always be prospecting.